Hey everyone, welcome to Fellowship of the Frugal. In today's video I'm going to talk about the mix that makes up your credit score. So the 5 different pieces that all come together to make that mysterious FICO credit score. What does it look like? How do you determine it? How can you help with knowing what your credit score is going to do depending on how you act? So this video is for you. So if you like it, be sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and I'll be sure to get out some more videos like it. So I hope you enjoy. Alright, so the mysterious FICO score or your credit score. How do you determine what it's going to be, or what pieces really come together to make up that full pie that is known as your credit score? What does it all look like? So this video is for you. So there's 5 pieces that make up your credit score. Those are going to be your history or your account history, also known as your payment history. There's going to be your amount owed, which is also called the credit utilization. There's the types of account that you have, there's the lengths of accounts, and there's also the credit mix. So I'm going to break each one of those down for you. So first, we'll start with the biggest one, and that is your payment history. So more important than anything else in all the things that make up your credit score, your payment history is the most important part. It makes up 35% of your total score. So what does that mean? That means for all the credit obligations that you've had, no matter what type, but if you've had any type of credit obligation that is reported to the credit bureaus, have you paid those things on time? Are they due monthly? Do you pay them on time? Are they due yearly? Have you paid them on time? Have you ever been 30 days late, or have you always been under that 30 days? Better yet, have you always paid before the due date? Any version of that, it all comes down to, have you paid your obligations? That is the single biggest piece, and that is the most important thing that you can do above all else. I mean, they're all important, but if you had to pick one, this would be the most important one. So if you're in a situation where maybe your credit is not that great and you're trying to rebuild your credit, but you do have some current loan obligations out there, if you can start to pay those things on time now, every month, month after month after month, all of the accounts, that's really going to make the biggest difference for you as opposed to a lot of other things that you can do. So guard your payment history with everything that you have. And think about it this way: if you loan somebody money, would you want them to pay you back? I mean, absolutely. So credit agencies, lending agencies, they want to know, is this person going to pay us back what they owe? How do we determine that? By looking at their history of making payments, whether it's good or bad. They're going to look at that, and that's why that's such a big piece of that credit score, is because your history is a good indication of how your future is going to go in more ways than just finances, but that's a good way as far as the credit world is concerned. So guard that with everything that you have. So the next piece, which is not much smaller, but it's a little bit smaller, is your amount owed. Now this is also known as the credit utilization. Now all I mean is, think of a line of credit, for example. Let's say you have $10,000 available to you as a line of credit. How much of that have you used? Have you used half of it? Have you used all of it? Have you used maybe 10% of it? That actually matters when it comes to your credit score. So sticking with that example of $10,000, if you have, we'll say half of it, let's say you've taken out $5,000 in a balance, then that's actually not all that great. It's not terrible, but that's a little higher than what the credit agencies want. If you've maxed out your $10,000, that's not a good thing. You may think, hey, look at me, I have this line of credit, I pulled it out, all of it, I make my payments on time. That's a good thing, right? Well, not necessarily. Paying on it is a good thing, but utilizing the full 100% of what you have available to you is not a good thing. I've heard that the magic number is, most examples I hear about 30%. So if you have $10,000 available to you, you want to try to keep your balance at $3,000 or less. That's kind of a general rule of thumb. So you don't want to get that percentage too high. That's why that piece is so important. So something else I say about that is that piece of it looks at the total that's available to you. So let's say you had one credit card for $5,000, one credit card for $10,000. and the $5,000 one's maxed out, but you don't have any on the $10,000. Well, that's still you still have 5,000 out of 15,000 that's available to you. So that's still right at about a third that's available. So that's not as bad overall as, say, having one credit card for 5,000 and it's maxed out. So the 5,000 out of 5,000, that's not a good thing. So try to keep your utilization percentage at 30% or less would be my recommendation here. So the next piece is your length of accounts. So by that I mean, how long have you had these accounts? More than likely, if you're watching this, you probably have several different ones. You may have a mortgage, you may have a credit card, you may have a car loan, just some other ones for example. How old are the accounts versus how new are they? Generally speaking, an account that's older, say you've had a credit card for 5 years and one for 1 year, the one that's 5 years old is going to do you better than the one that's 1 year old. Now it's not going to be too terribly much of a difference, but the longer account history is a good thing for you. So let's say that you're in debt elimination mode and you have a credit card that's 15 years old and you have one that's 2 years old, and you get to where you're about to pay off both of them. You say, which one do I pay off first? Well, strictly speaking, from a credit score perspective, you want to pay off the newer one first and leave the older one open, leave it alone, because that one's had more time to work for you. So that's what I mean by length of accounts. It's simply how long have you had those accounts, and that's including all credit accounts, not just one or the other. It's all of them. So the next piece in this is the credit mix. And so what I mean by that is there's different types of loans. The way they're defined is typically you'll have installment or term loans, and you'll have revolving lines of credit. Those are going to be the two main types. Now with a term or installment loan, that's where you know up front the exact length of time you're going to have this loan, the exact payment that you're going to have, how long it's going to take you to pay it off, exactly what your interest and principal is. It's all laid out for you in the closing disclosure you have on the front end of that paperwork. So you have, say, an automobile loan, you know it's 5 years long, you know your payment's $400, that's a term loan. So there's no wiggle room, that's what it is, that's what you have. With a revolving line of credit, that's like a credit card, or say a home equity line of credit. It's similar. That's where you have a certain dollar amount that's available to you, and you can take from it, you can pay it back, take from it, pay it back. It's very flexible, and you only owe a balance, or I'm sorry, you only owe a percentage of interest based on what the balance is. So if you don't have any balance on it, then you don't pay any interest on it. Maybe an annual fee, but that's different. But I'm just talking about strictly balance here. They want to see that there's a mix, and mortgages too would still be considered a different mix. Yes, it is an installment or a term loan, but those are kind of viewed a little differently, a little more favorably. So you can have hypothetically a mortgage, a car loan, an unsecured loan, a credit card, home equity line of credit, and that would be a very good mix of different types of accounts that you could have. So that would work favorably for you if you had a different mix, instead of being all credit cards or all unsecured term loans. The last piece is new accounts. So not to confuse this with length of accounts, what I mean by new accounts here is things that you just got. You just applied for a new account, a new loan, you just got it, it's just been added to your credit score. Typically speaking, a brand new loan, if it shows up on your credit report, actually does bring your score down just a little bit. I mean, we're not talking anything crazy here, but it can bring it down a little bit. But then as you pay it, you get your payment history going, and then as it gets longer, you have the length of account on there, and so those things begin to work favorably for you. So then over time, is usually a rule of thumb that I say is about 6 months in a lot of cases, is it begins to work well for you and actually up your score at that point, assuming you're doing what you're supposed to do. But that piece involves just new accounts. So pretty much anytime you get a brand new account on your credit report, it's going to affect it. I mean, it's always going to. If you have any kind of credit monitoring service, whenever you apply for a new loan, it's going to pop up, and it's going to say within about 30 or 60 days that it's affected your credit score. So you will see that. But don't freak out. Keep paying on it, and it'll help you. I have a lot of customers over the years that have really been nervous about the idea of applying for something because, like, oh, it's gonna kill my credit score. It's really gonna hurt it. It's like, well, it may help. It may affect it a little bit, but we're not talking anything crazy here. You're not going to go from a 820 to a 700 because you apply for something. Okay, so it's not exactly how it works. Again, it may ding it a little bit, but over time, as long as you pay it, you keep it active and in good standing, it's going to more than make up for the points that it took off on the front end when you applied for the loan. So, with that being said, those are the 5 ways that your credit score is made up. That's how we put it together. That's how, I should say, that's how FICO puts it together. We're also known as your credit score. Now that's strictly on the FICO credit score, which is what you think of with things like Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian. Some places will have custom scores that won't necessarily follow that same pattern or same algorithm or same formula. So that's just depending on the institution. There's a lot of different ones that can apply here, so it's hard to say. But either way, those pieces of the pie are a good rule to follow. Ultimately, you just want to make sure that you're paying your stuff, that you're a good risk. And so again, putting yourself in the lender's shoes, if you're going to lend money to somebody, you want to see that they know how to handle their credit, they don't max their stuff out, they pay their stuff back, they know how to mix and handle different types of accounts. I mean, an easy way to remember all this or think, is this good or is this bad, is you just put yourself in the lender's shoes and think, somebody asks you for money, what are you going to look at to determine if you're going to loan this person money or not? So all these things are important. With that being said, those are the 5 things that make up the score. I really hope this helps. This is important stuff, and I hope you can use this to immediately begin to improve your credit score, or maybe check out my other video where I talk about how to get started with credit in the first place and get started out on the right foot. Hope to see you again soon.